This is the show where we have a conversation about your money and your life. It's a Father's Day special today, you all. And today we're going to be talking about fathers. We're going to be talking about teamwork. We're going to be talking about the family. So it's a Father's Day special, and we're talking about teamwork in the family, in the relationship, and as fathers, and as it relates to your money. My guest today is a role model in all of this. They're debt free. Yeah, they are debt free. And he's here today to talk especially to the fathers and the father figures. He shares his experiences with you to inspire you, to motivate you to get intentional with your role as a father, as a spouse, as a provider, and as a role model. So I'm going to be welcoming Jacob Ayafor right now. Please help me welcome Jacob Ayafor. Hi, Jacob.
Hi, thank you for having me on the show, and happy Father's Day to all the fathers in the house. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for being here, and I think we're going to have a great show.
Absolutely. So for those watching, if you don't know yet, Jacob is debt free. He is the spouse of the person we had on the very first episode, Femi. This is her husband here today, talking to us today. So all the amazing dads out there, please come join us. All the spouses, please send a share and invite your spouses so they can join us and we have this conversation together. Okay. So we'll jump right in. Jacob, just tell us about yourself.
Okay, so I am a father of four, so that's why I'm a dad. Because I have four kids, and two of them are twins. My twin girls, they keep me busy, and I have two older boys. One of them is 19, the other is 17, and the twins are 12. So it's a busy house for me. And I come from Bambali in the northwest area of Cameroon, and I have been in Canada now since 2009. So that's somewhere around 12 years or thereabout.
Yeah.
And in my day-to-day life, I am busy with the family. In my professional life, I have been in customer service. I have been in the financial services business, and currently I am professionally a civil servant with the Federal Department of Immigration. So,
Oh yeah, with the government of Canada, yeah.
yes, so those are the things that I do now, and all of that is all hinged on my family life and my role as a dad.
Amazing.
Yes.
So we do come from a culture where the relationships that we have with our fathers is not necessarily the same relationship that we're having with our children right now. So how do we relate to our fathers back home? And how has our culture kind of played a role in the way we look at money within the family setting?
Well, I grew up in a culture like many dads today grew up, a culture in which life was kind of patriarchal, in which men controlled, and that's the kind of role that we saw in our fathers and grandfathers. And as things evolve, it came to the point where it turns out that part of that men controlling involves keeping their paycheck very close to their chest. And so what they earn is top secret.
Yeah.
And that's one of the backgrounds that we kind of have today as dads. And it's a background that I strongly suggest that we relinquish and stay away from it as far as we can, because it is just a recipe for conflict in the family. Because it today things have changed from that patriarchal way of life that was led by our parents and grandparents to the point that spouses today need to work in collaboration in order to get the family functioning well, especially financially. Now, keeping our paycheck close to our chest is actually a departure from what the patriarchs used to do, because they were used to going out and hunting, and when they catch the moose, they bring it back and lay it down to nourish the family.
Yeah, they brought the whole thing and gave it to the wife and said, "Okay, this is everything we brought back home."
Exactly. So
use that to take care of the family.
After following the traditional norms that they used to follow, but what becomes yours, that is what you bring to the family. That's what they brought to the family, and that was to nourish the family. No portion of it was sacred, and so today our own the hunting catch that we bring home is our paychecks.
Paycheck, yeah.
And unfortunately, some of us, the spouses, we tend to keep that very close to our chest. So that departure is something that we need to get rid of and make sure that we collaborate, especially in a situation where the two spouses at home need to work and bring in something to the family.
Yeah, what we see a lot of right now is that compared to the way we grew up, where only one parent was working. So for most people, it's only their father who was working, and then the mother was the housewife. That was the situation in our home as well. The mother is the housewife, and the father is the one bringing in all the income. But right now, the way where we're living right now, we're in America, in Canada, we're in the diaspora right now. It's practically impossible for just one person to work. So you'd see in most homes, both the father and the mother are working. But it's kind of changed the dynamic in a way. I think we haven't quite adjusted to how to handle that now, knowing that, yes, you're bringing in a paycheck, but the wife is also bringing in a paycheck. How do we kind of make this whole thing work? Like, there's that going on, right?
Exactly. And that is where the teamwork becomes crucial.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you bring in a paycheck and the other spouse brings in a paycheck, then we have now developed a family purse.
Yeah.
It becomes family income. And it's very important that we work as a team to manage that family income in a way that would enable us live within our means. And when we live within our means, we set ourselves up to be debt-free. Now, there are circumstances that come up that take away from that family purse that we absolutely have to manage. Mm-hmm. And there are personal things that come up. There are family things that come up. There are things that come up with relatives. And if we are not on the same page managing some of those things, then it creates a situation in which an awareness about the health of the family purse it is not uniform, and once it's not uniform, questions arise, and most of the time in that situation the questions will not be very pleasant.
I've heard a lot of people say, most ladies, they've said, my money is my money, your money is to take care of the family. What do you say to that?
Well, if you want the family to work, if you're interested in having your family work, we have to desist from that kind of attitude.
Yeah.
We need to rid ourselves of the my money, your money thing, because if the family has to work, it has to be the family income that is funding that family.
Yeah, and it's a team. It's a team effort. Because one thing we fail to also pay attention to is the fact that, especially here, back home, you have relatives who are going to be staying in the house with you, or maybe you have a nanny, you have somebody who is taking care of the kids, so you're able to go out and do your work. Here, there's no nanny, or there's none of that. Maybe there is, but a lot of people can't afford to do that. So even if your wife is a stay-at-home mom, the only reason you're able to go out and do your job the way you can is because there's somebody home taking care of your kids. So even if your
Absolutely.
wife is not contributing financially, as in bringing in money to the family, if she wasn't there, you wouldn't be able to make the kind of income that you make.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the spouse that is at home, we really can't consider them as not making money, because they are there at home to help us save money. Because if that spouse is not at home, then money is going to go from the family purse into procuring services that have to fill in that gap. So when a spouse is at home, they're saving money for the family.
Yes.
So yeah, so it's crucial that we consider the economic benefit of a spouse being at home and helping save the money that should have gone out for some unnecessary daycare, or to bring in some temporary nanny who might not even have attitudes that are family friendly.
True.
Yeah, so it's
True.
crucial that we
Very
consider
true.
the economic benefit of a spouse being at home, because it works in the interest of the family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for spouses who find it hard to talk about money, do you have anything from your personal experience? How did it happen within your family for you to be able to communicate easily with your wife about money?
Right. First thing is, we consider each other's input as something working for a common goal for the family.
Mm-hmm.
And once you have that understanding that each other is coming from a point, from a place of family interest, building to achieve a goal for the family, and that nothing we are doing is for self-interest.
Yes.
Nothing is selfish. It's selfless for the family. And from that point, we build. And when you see each other's input as a strategy to safeguard the family's interest,
Mm-hmm.
then the negativity that comes around discussions about finances, it disappears. And when
Yeah.
it disappears, then the groundwork is laid to actually see how to go ahead and live your lives within your means. And once you have established that rapport between you as spouses, then it gives you the leeway to be able to involve even the kids, because sometimes it is the pressures from the kids that would drive us to live beyond our means. Kids start to grow up, and they confront peer pressure, and because of that peer pressure, you are also faced with pressure at home as a family, and that pressure finally faces your family purse. If kids
Yeah.
go out there at school, they see their friends with this gadget or that gadget, or this kind of fashion that they wear,
Yeah.
and then they come home and they feel like, yeah, they absolutely have to wear that as well. So they start to make demands that, if the spouses are not on the same page to manage that pressure, then it ends up in a dent on the family purse,
Yeah.
and that's the beginning of debt. And so, if the spouses are already on the same page, they would be able to bring in the kids and say, "Yeah, we understand that this is something that you would like to have.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, you need to understand that this is how we function as a family. We have this purse from which to draw. So if you look at this and see what we have to deal with, we have your food to deal with, we have your stuff to deal with, we have your health to deal with, those things that are basic necessities. This is what funds those aspects of our lives. Now, with this, do you think we can afford this now? And actually bring them to understand some of the gives and takes, so
Yeah.
that they have an understanding, especially if they are of age uh, to grasp some management concepts. Then you
Yeah.
get them to see why it's not possible to get it right now, or why it's possible to get it only by a certain time, and what they can do to contribute towards getting it sooner. Sometimes some of the kids might not be old enough to work, but it doesn't mean that they don't have something to do to keep money in that purse.
Yeah.
And it comes down to simple things as switching off the lights in your room. When you get in there, instead of going to sleep with your lights on, you turn your lights off.
Yes.
And when you turn your lights off, you're keeping money in that purse that eventually is going to accrue to get that much needed toy that you need.
That is so true. And one thing also, I've spoken to people in our community who say the relationship they had with their dad was the kind of relationship that when Papa is coming in, we need to run and go hide. Like a lot of people had that kind of fear relationship. But here right now, hearing you talk, the kind of relationship that you're having with your kids is actually involvement. And we growing up, we didn't learn a lot of things about money. But if we don't do something different, like what you're talking about, if we don't do something different, our kids are going to end up the same way, like us, learning about money at a late stage. So
Exactly.
It's really important from what you're saying, get the kids involved. You and your spouse on the same page, you're a team, you're working towards the same goal. And once you're on that team, then it's possible for you to involve the kids in a way that aligns with those family goals that you have laid out for yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's key to, first of all, have the spouses on one page, because that lays the foundation on how you're going to communicate with the kids. And to establish that rapport with the spouse, it first of all involves shedding some of those attitudes that we learned from the patriarchal lifestyle with our parents. And we are in a setup where some of those things automatically disappear.
Mm-hmm.
We are compelled to be more involved in our kids' lives now, because if they have to go to a game, it is your responsibility as a dad or as a parent to drop them off. We're no longer as free as we used to be back home, where we handled our stuff on our own. We went to school on our own, and we figured out how to run to school and get to school early. But now
you have to take them to school. You make arrangements for the school boards or certain things like that. Yeah.
The circumstances now, they kind of automatically get us involved. And there's no way you can negotiate your way out of that now. So we're more involved in the kids' lives. And the more involved we are, then the more opportunities we have to give them some of those lessons bit by bit as they grow. And then you start to bring in the hard stuff as they grow older. And one of the things that we need to do is really to be transparent, especially with what we earn. And I'll tell you a story that I had from a marriage encounter.
Okay.
And it's a story that lays a foundation of why we really have to step away from that non-transparent way of dealing with our finances. Now, with the paycheck to the chest kind of strategy, in a marriage encounter back in Cameroon, there was a couple that shared their experience about the consequences of that strategy. Because the spouse didn't know what their husband was earning, they made demands about the things to acquire for the family without knowing whether they can, whether he could afford it or not.
Yeah, she kind of felt that the man was making more money than he was making.
Exactly. And so when he said, "I don't have money for that," because the wife didn't know what he earned, there was no way that she could believe him.
Yeah.
So they were constantly in conflict. Each time he says, "I don't have money to buy that," and each time he said it was the truth, but she couldn't see it. So they had to butt heads all the time, and it it sucks out the energy from the couple
Yeah.
until they attended a marriage encounter themselves, and they got to that suggestion of having to be transparent with their earnings. And when they learned that, they got home, and the man went and brought his paycheck. And he brought this stack of paycheck that he has been earning for how long he's been working.
Mm-hmm.
And then his wife got to see for the first time what the man was earning. And
Oh my God.
her reaction was to break down in tears immediately, because she got to understand why he said he didn't have money. And she got to realize that all these years he has been telling the truth, but she couldn't see it. And so it became an aha moment for the couple. And so it is a stress-free strategy to disclose your earnings. Because at the point that you say, we cannot afford this, it's clear. It is going to be the family purse that dictates what you can afford or not afford. So that it's no longer something that is tied to you as somebody who constantly says no, but it is the proof. Like the Americans say, the devil is in the details.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you look at the purse, and then you see if the demand that we are making is realistic or not.
That is so true, because there are people who it creates room for distrust, essentially, because a lot of wives, I don't know, for some reason they're kind of wired to not believe whatever their husband says. So they're looking for a reason to not believe something. So the moment you say I can't afford it, they start making up reasons in their head to say, where are you spending all your money? Yes, you're making a lot of money, but where are you? So it starts creating the room for lots of other things that the marriage starts to break down unnecessarily. But if you could just, like you're saying, relinquish that, just share the information with your spouse. You're a team, share the information with your spouse. It's going to remove a lot of the stress that people have around money.
Exactly. Yeah. You're right.
Wow.
And so,
Wow.
so those are some of the things that I learned early in my marriage life, and they've been helpful. Now, sometimes some of us as men, we do dumb stuff, and I encourage the daddies to communicate more, because there are things that to me are trivialities, but there are things that are not trivialities to my spouse. And
For example,
now, just making a conversation about what I'm doing during the day, it fills up a lot of gaps. Like at the beginning of my marriage, I used to leave home, and I would just be like, I'm going to town. So, but now I look back and I'm like, what do you mean going to town? So when you say I'm going to go to the Ministry of Education, because I used to be a teacher and a science teacher for 12 years in Cameroon. So if I'm going to town, I'm going to go to the Ministry of Education, and then I'm going to go to Commercial Avenue for this. I'm going to pass through the market for that. Or when I leave school after the teaching, I'll be going to the teacher center for a meeting, and after that, I'm going to be passing through the bank for this, and I would see a friend.
So it's just about making a full conversation, just getting the person involved in your day. So there's no room for there's no room for doubt. There's no room for distrust, for those things to start building, because you're not telling them anything.
Yeah. So at the beginning, to me, when I was like, I'm going to town, it didn't occur to me that those details are important. But after some time growing and growing more, I'm like, okay, fine. If she just left the house and she said, I'm going to town. So I put myself in their shoes, and then I start to realize that the information that I share is insufficient.
Yes. Yeah.
So those are some of the things that, as dads, people of few words, because men are naturally people of few words. I'm not sure why, but it's something that we need to learn to communicate more, just for the sake of communication. And And it ends up because there are things that are important to women that we communicate and share even details. And that way, once you learn to share those details, then you would be able to develop a habit in sharing details about your finances. And so it just becomes second nature that even issues about finances, they're not going to become hardcore stuff that you have to call a session for it and have to either put your foot down to say something or either back off from a conflict. But things about finances just naturally come into conversation, and then you shed some of those tensions that surround finances.
So for a father who is out there right now, who's listening to you and he's thinking all of this makes sense, but it's something that they've never done in their house, what's the easy way to get started with that?
Well, it would be for you to identify anything that works for you. The quickest way to do it is to start.
Yes.
I'm not going to tell you where to start. Each dad they have a good enough judgment to determine any starting point for them. So if it just comes to making a grocery list, and if your spouse is the one that makes that list, then you could jump in and say, okay, fine, what are we buying this week? What do the kids need for school this week? And just get involved. And I can guarantee that she would be very happy to share what she's putting onto the list. And just asking a question like, do we have enough money for this? Or do we need more money for this? That's a question that is just going to strike a conversation. And it doesn't have to be some prescribed starting point, but just getting involved and starting a conversation. Before you realize, you have 5, 10, 15 minutes of a conversation, and before you realize it, you're driving together to the grocery store, and you have a complete picture of what you're going to buy, and you might already have decided that we're going to stick to the list or not. And if you decide that you're going to stick to the list or not stick to the list, you might already have an understanding of why you made those decisions, and it would start to build. And something that really worked for me when I came across your 14-day baby steps.
Oh,
yes, it was something that it just helped to break up the task into little steps that is not overwhelming, because sometimes men, because they have those few words, they are afraid of the task of having to deal with that mammoth task of dealing with money. And so the breaking down into little pieces to deal with within a short time, and then going to the next task, it would be something that is helpful for men, because I can guarantee that people who like to compartmentalize stuff to do, and I'm dealing with this now, and we are not good at multitasking. And the more we try, the more we fail at it. So if there's an understanding that we are good at dealing with stuff in compartments, I'm not prescribing that we don't try to multitask, because it's only in trying to multitask that you get to understand the dealings that the other spouse has when they have to multitask. It gives you a better understanding when you try. If there's that understanding that they compartmentalize stuff, so that 14-day strategy, it helps to compartmentalize that, and then we finish this task, finish that, and then try to draw relationships between those tasks, and it becomes easier.
Okay. So I'm going to expand on that 14-day strategy here, but let's just go through a few questions, a few comments here. This answers no room for questions. I think she's referring to communications with fathers. Like, people not having the ability to ask their dads questions.
Okay. Maybe Anne can type in something to clarify what they mean. But if that is what it is, then I would encourage the dad to develop more of a listening ear, and because it's in listening to your family members, listening to your spouse, listening to your kids, listening to the people that you interact with, that you get a better understanding of where they're coming from. And while prepping for this, I had something in my notes about asking clarification questions.
Mm-hmm.
And if something is not clear, there's something that my spouse tells me all the time: do not assume. And it's a crucial thing. Now,
that's her on the screen. She says teamwork goes a long way, communication goes even further. And that's what you're talking about. Communicate.
Yes, exactly.
Do not assume.
Exactly. Yeah. So that assumption that you have in your mind, I suggest that you go ahead and clarify. And you would clarify that by asking questions. When you ask those clarification questions, then you would get a chance to find out the other's point of view, and to make sure that what you have in your mind is not faulty. Because when you go away with a faulty impression, that sets a foundation for you to build even faulty stuff on that foundation. Yeah. And before you know it, you have a house of cards that is going to collapse at a time that you least expect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said here, great word of wisdom to our fathers, Tanya. Don't wait. Just start and get involved in the daily tasks that make the household function. That is so true. Because part of our culture as well, it kind of assigns. I know a lot of people here do that differently now, but there's still some people who say that job is the woman's job. This task is the woman's task. But we're failing to realize that right now where we are, there's no such thing as it's your task, it's my task, it's your money, it's my money. We all get up in the morning, we all go to jobs, we all work full 7, 12 hours a day, and we come back home. But there are still kids to be cared for. There are still things that need to happen.
Exactly.
So when we start, I really want fathers to get involved in a different way, because by default, the woman is going to take care of the kids. By default, the woman is going to do a lot of those things.
Yeah.
And by default, the woman is going to say, well, now because I'm doing all of this, I'm going to let you take care of everything that concerns money. So it's kind of people, because you haven't found that balance. Yeah. Now people start to fight to say, okay, I'll take care of this and I'll forget about the rest because you were letting me take care of the kids by myself. It's just those kind of things that we need to break. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, there are some of those roles that we call default roles. There are things that kind of come naturally as you're born and you grow up. There are some things that just kind of naturally define themselves into some kind of roles, and the assignment that we have in our age is to rethink those roles and see how we can be of help to alleviate some of those pressures that come with those roles. The moment you're born, you depend solely on your mother for food, nourishment.
Yes.
And as we grow, it is only the type of food that changes, and the type of food that we consume. As it changes, then the preparation of that of the food starts to differ. Yeah. So as you're born and you depend on breast milk for nourishment, it comes to a time where you're old enough to start eating solid food, and then the mother has to cook that food, prepare that food in a different way, and in the course of doing that, she's also preparing food for the other children, and finally the biggest child of the house, that is the husband, and that husband is somebody that grew up from breast milk, and so some of the roles, they kind of change, they switch from the mother to the wife, and that's the point where the husband kind of becomes one of those children that she's dealing with from the point of nourishment. Now, as she prepares the food to feed the other children that depend on her, then it is in the course of that preparation that he himself gets his own nourishment. Now, the whole house gets attached to her for that nourishment. And so it becomes a task for the husband and the other and the grown-up kids to start to reflect and say, okay, at this point that she has to prepare all of this, there's some of the heavy lifting that she doesn't have to do. There is stuff associated with all that preparation of food and nourishment that can be done by us who are waiting to eat. She doesn't have to prepare the food and then come and set the table herself. She doesn't have to split the firewood in order to come and cook the food. So while she's there and putting all that stuff together, we can go out. I can rally the kids around the splitting of the wood, around washing the plates and setting up of the table, chopping up the onions and the spices, grinding the egusi and all that.
Yeah. And there are even men who have learned how to cook. And sometimes your wife is coming back home and she's super tired and she's trying to figure out, oh my God, what am I going to cook today? And she walks into the house and the husband has already made food.
Exactly. I was driving to that because once we start to get involved in that task and facilitating that process of her preparing nourishment for the family, then we also learn lessons about how it's done. And then at some point, because she has to get torn off the family into a job, then the schedule sometimes provide for the fact that while she's out there, the other spouse and the kids are home. And while they are home, chopping up some of those spices and preparing what she has to cook. And then at some point we discover that, okay, we finished this and we have room to put it in the pot as well and cook.
Yeah.
And before you discover, in 45 minutes, you have a meal that is ready. Today we have machines like rice cookers and all that you just need to do some measurements according to manuals and press a button. And in 20 minutes, 25 minutes, rice is ready.
I wish more fathers would get intentional in this way and just realize that certain things our culture dictated them as the woman's role, but we have to make an effort to make a difference, because back home, when those cultures were kind of created, the man was the only one going out to do to bring in food to the house, and the woman was home. So it was kind of normal to just happen that way. Now we actually need to rethink the way we live our lives, rethink what it is that I could do to make our family situation better. It's a team. It's not.
It's a team.
Yeah.
And
okay. So Anne, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to say is that my theory is that it seems that naturally that inclination to look to her for nourishment is always going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
It seems burnt into us. But it is our task to reflect and see how we make that task easier for her, so that she doesn't become enslaved to it. But we work as a team to make it easier.
Okay, we're going to go through questions here. Anne has a question. She says, "What about a situation where the man doesn't want his wife to work because he thinks he's the provider? What's the guarantee that he will be able to provide for her ever? He'll be able to provide forever." If a man doesn't want you to work because he says he's the provider.
Well, that's kind of a hard one, because if they don't want the spouse to work, there has to be an assurance that there is already the financial situation is covered.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be the current financial. Is going to be the current income in the family that would determine if she's going to not work or not.
Yeah. I know a lot of people say this just because they're making good money and they don't want, for something, it's just pride. They just want to say my wife doesn't work, I take care of everything. But it really comes back to, like you were saying before, the teamwork and setting up the family goal and knowing this is where we're going financially, and this is, if my wife stays home, we're still able to take care of all those things. We're financially independent. Maybe you have some piece of real estate that's bringing income every month to the house. So even if you, for some reason, lose your own job, it doesn't become an emergency now where she has to start panicking to say, hey, we need to go and find a new job or things like that. If you're financially secure, you have a steady source of income, which is not your job, which is something besides that job, because if you lose, you could lose your job at any time. So husbands, if you think you're financially secure and you have a steady source of income that doesn't necessarily depend on your income, and you want your wife to stop working, again, don't impose, but have the conversation with the wife. And she is a person on her own. You are a person on your own, and together you're a team. You can't just turn around and tell your wife, I don't want you to work. Have a conversation. She has a mind of her own, and she has her opinions that you need to listen to. You can't just impose things like that. That's my take on it.
Exactly. So there is nothing wrong with a spouse, with the wife not working. We just have to make sure that the safeguards are there to ensure that if she's not working, the family has enough to live on. That what funds the family has to be guaranteed, so that the family doesn't go hungry if something happens.
Yeah.
So that's the only way that you can guarantee that the spouse will not work, by making sure that the family has a source of income that is not going to disappear at some point.
Yeah. All right, perfect. So next question here is a comment. It's just exactly, Jacob. Assumption is a very bad thing. Most of the times it leads to misunderstanding. Leke says, message to women, don't necessarily wait for your spouse to figure out what they need to get involved. Make it happen. For example, in the evening after supper, ask him, would you like to clean the dishes or bathe the kids? So he gets to choose which one he wants to do. That's a tip there.
Yeah.
Yolande says, communication is really key. Wish so many dads will understand that going to town really means nothing. It's even an annoying answer after after a question is being asked.
Absolutely. Because, but what does it really mean? I'm going to town.
Yeah.
So as a dad, I learned that lesson the hard way, and it's my tip for any dad that finds themselves in that situation to cultivate that habit of giving the details, because when you give those details, it goes a long way to save you a lot of trouble.
Like, yes, confirming that. So that was a great illustration about the going to town thing.
Yeah.
Okay, super. It's amazing. Keep sending your questions, guys. I'm so excited that you're putting in all these questions here. Yeah. So just a while ago, Jacob mentioned about the 14-day challenge, which is what you took. Essentially, your wife introduced you to that. Tell us that story. How did she do that? The 14-day money challenge. Yeah.
So the first, she was on a forum with you. I don't remember exactly where, but
it was a lesson meeting that we had, and then the next one.
So it went from that to her showing me what you have started to do, and she introduced me to it. And because I had you on Facebook as well, I went and subscribed to it. So I started getting the alerts, and from the alerts we would get into a conversation, and that's how it started to break some of those tasks from big tasks into smaller tasks, and then eventually into actually doing a complete review of family income and the all the tenets that take away from the family purse, and reevaluating how to manage some of those things, and to make sure that we are very intentional about what happens with the family purse. So, and especially for dads that have to do one thing at a time, I found it to be the key thing to do, because it breaks the task and makes it easier.
Yeah. So just to explain that, it's a 14-day money finder challenge that I had put up sometime last year because it took you guys 1 year to get out of debt. So I put it sometime last year around May or so, which
Yeah,
I created and I had up on my website. You could essentially just go in there and put in your email, and then every single day you would get an email coming to you telling you what it is that you would need to do. So it was 14 days. um, each day had a task. Day one was simply for you to make sure you have access to all your bank accounts, all your credit card accounts, just log in. Day two, I think it was just about you putting down your income. And I really encourage you to do this with a spouse or your partner or whoever it is yeah, you do it with your spouse. If you're a single person, I think it's a good idea to just find a buddy, an accountability buddy to do it with. So you on day one, it was just about being able to log into all your accounts and figure out that you have online access to all of them. Day two was finding all your income, writing it down, piece of paper. It's you being honest. You're not saying any information to me. And day three was then. So every single day has a task. I'm not going to explain all the tasks here. I want you guys to go to my website and do it for yourself. You can invite your husbands to do it with you. It used to be free. Right now, it's no longer free. I took it off the free version. So just know there's going to be a fee when you go in there and you sign up. I'll send you an email to let you know what the next steps you need to do. But it's a 14-day money finder. You go to my website, www.idaAzefor.com. It's the first thing that pops up on your screen, and then you can get started with that. It's really, really good. Jacob here did it. His wife did it. They did it together. And in 1 year, they paid off all their debt. Fathers, if on this Father's Day, it's only one thing you take away is just that be intentional with your money, be intentional about communicating with your spouse, be intentional about being a role model in your home because the kids are watching you. They're gonna do
absolutely.
exactly what you do. Just sit down and think for a second. You have a daughter, and your daughter gets married to a person that's like you. Would you be very happy? Or would
Absolutely.
you not want your daughter to get married to a person like you?
Absolutely.
If you say no to that, then there's something you're doing wrong and there's something that you need to change and you need to change it right now. Because
Right.
your sons are going to grow up to be exactly like you because that's all they're copying.
Indeed. And one thing, one key thing about the communication, it turns out that most often it is the dads that are more likely to develop a business venture. And in developing that business venture, I'm not saying that that the wives don't do business ventures. A lot of them do by the side as well. But for the dads that develop business ventures, it's very important that we communicate everything from the start. Because in my days in the financial services industry, there were days that I had to do my own prospections and to meet my clients and to make my own sales, and that's how I made money. And once you develop that business venture, it's important that you lay it out with the spouse right off the start so that there is a complete understanding of what it takes. And it's also important to learn the details of what that venture involves.
Mm-hmm.
And in my specific example, I contributed a great deal in the debt that we had. And that's because I left a job and I went into independent business with an employee mentality. And what happened there was the fact that I made money, and with that mentality of having my taxes taken off automatically, I made money without having a complete understanding of what I needed to put aside when it comes tax time.
Yeah.
And so, with that employee mentality and not taking the steps that I needed to take as an independent, quote unquote,
Business owner to keep money by the side for your
business owner,
taxes. Yeah.
it came it came tax time, and there was a big ticket, and that plunges you straight into debt. And
Yeah.
in the financial services business, uh, once you get to tax time, they're not small tickets. And so once you lay it out with the spouse, and you also learn all the details, and you make sure that you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing in order to avoid debt, it's a good thing to do. And the importance of laying it out with the spouse is so that there's an understanding of whether you're going to be gone a lot, or whether you're going to be available for the family when you're needed, so that you don't have to overcome objections at home just when you have to meet a client.
Yeah.
Once you have objections at home, that sets the tone with which you're going to meet a client, and that is likely to lead to a failed sale, and that goes directly to your bottom line. And when it goes to your bottom line, it defines whether you're going to be in debt or not.
So that really goes back to the whole teamwork thing. It goes back to communication. It goes to teamwork, because as a team, just imagine you're on the football field and everybody is a good player, but you're not going towards the same goal of taking the ball to the pole. Everybody just wants to prove that I am the best dribbler. The ball is never going to get to the pole. Everybody is playing. Everyone is playing, but you never get into the goal, and you're just fighting among yourself because I want to prove that I'm the best. You want to prove you're the best. And then the children are the ones suffering. Your finances are suffering. Everything else around is suffering. But if you two have a goal and you're like, okay, I'm the one who is at the front, I'm going to take all those balls and put in the pole. Your job is to send it to me. You have a strategy. You're a team. At every single time you're going to hit the goal, or at least you're working towards that. So communication, people, it's key. Communication is key. You're a team. You're not rivals. Couples, you're a team. You're rivals. You're not rivals. Fathers, you have to communicate more. Women, we talk a lot. And sometimes the men just shut their ears because it's like you're always talking. But if your wife is yaddy talking all the time, there's something that she's trying to tell you that you're not listening.
Yeah.
That you're not listening to. Yolanya has a question. She said, what about, how do you deal with that who do things at their own time, which is most of the time not the best time to be done? For example, he needs to have something fixed and in his own time in 2 weeks down the road when you need it done now. Something's broken in the house, you need it fixed now. He wants to do it 2 weeks down the road. How do you deal with that?
Well, the way to deal with that is to stop that procrastination. It's not about us. It's about what needs to be done. If something is broken and needs fixing, it's not about us doing it when we want. It's about us doing it when it needs to be done.
So how do you get your husband to do that when it needs to be done? That's the question.
It's not the thing. It's not you to get him to do it. It's the thing that needs to be done. It needs it, and it's calling out to be fixed. So one of my defaults, one of my faults is procrastination as well. So I'm telling myself, Jacob, get up and do this because it needs to be done. It doesn't have
Jacob,
to be.
you are good at telling yourself that. I can see, let me say Yolan is saying that right now, and I can see Yolan, or I can see myself, if I want it to be done and it's not being done, I can see myself just talking about it every second. And the more I talk about it, the more angry you're going to be because I'm nagging you. How do you handle that? I think that's the question that she's trying to get you to answer.
Exactly. I'll give you a common example that took place this morning in my own life. Today, there was a gadget that I had to move with one of the kids from downstairs upstairs, and it's been a few weeks that I had to do it, and for some reason I don't have a concrete reason why I didn't move it, but this morning I was like, what are you doing? So you have to move this. It's inconvenient for the household, but why am I not moving it? So I put aside every other thing that I had to do, and I made that statement, Jacob, do it now. And I did. Yeah. So
it's not the wife's role. It's not the wife's role to be nagging you, to be reminding you. It's the father who has to say, you know what, this needs to be done. I am the provider in this house. I'm going to take care of it now because it needs to be done.
Yes. So we don't have to put that burden on them to have to remind us about stuff that we see ourselves that needs to be done.
Yeah. So, okay. Lekeye says, I don't quite buy the idea that men aren't good at multitasking. They can learn, most job ads out there have ability to multitask as a requirement. And chances are your spouse is doing just fine in one of those jobs.
Yeah, well,
If he can do it at work for someone else, he can do it in his own company, which is his household, where he's a co-owner. One thing at a time is a good option, though, if that works better for guys, just as long as they're actually doing it.
right. There is a whole debate about multitasking, and if multitasking is a real thing as such, because it only takes jugglers. It only takes professional jugglers to really do a lot of things at once, like putting up, like spinning a ball on one hand and holding, spinning a ball on another foot while balancing something on their nose. It takes a professional juggler to do that. And there is a whole debate about multitasking at the job site and even at home, which we can get into at another time. But yeah, we understand what we mean by multitasking in this context, and I'm sure that's what Leke is talking about. Yes, so we can do a few things almost at once, which would qualify as multitasking in our context. So, and that's what a lot of wives do. While they're cooking stuff, they are also baking that and mixing this, or telling a kid to stop what they're doing and all that. So even though we're kind of doing it one thing at a time, but we are trying to keep an eye on a lot of things. And that's the understanding of multitasking that we have. And of course, we as spouses, we can learn how to do that. And if we are not good at it, we can at least try. And when we try, it would give us a sense of what the other spouse goes through when they try to juggle some of those things. And with that understanding, you would be more appreciative of what they do, and you can empathize more.
Okay, like I'm not sure if that answers your question. If you have a follow-up, please go ahead. Euphemia here says being a stay-at-home is also a job, because if we monetize that, it will be a lot. That is so true.
Yeah, exactly.
How expectations lead to resentment. Sorry, go ahead. I was just going.
Yeah, there was a time that I happened to be at the University of Leuven in Belgium, and I was in a theology class because I did theology for a year, believe it or not. Okay, so in the theology class, there was a course about women's emancipation, and there was a debate about the woman's place being in the home, and that course was taught by a feminist. And in that debate, they were trying to find out from us, the participants in that course, the students, if we thought it was a true statement or a false statement. And in my debate, I came up with the theory that the woman's place is kind of best in the home, not for the reasons that we have in modern times, but because they are the best at it, and that word home should be redefined so that we see the home as a whole enterprise on its own that needs its own staff. And so when we say a woman's place is in the home, it's not in terms of the derogatory connotation that we put to it. We should rather recognize that a home is best managed by the woman. I don't know why they are the best, but it just turns out that they are the best at it. There are a few men that are not in the majority that would do that, but the majority comes from the side of the woman. And if we were to say the woman's place is best at the home, it's not because I don't want it to be because we're just going to make the home be some kind of place that we would create a mess and expect her to pick up after us. But it should be the home in the definition of an enterprise that she runs and requires her own staff and a budget for it. so that it becomes another office that she's working in it, that is equivalent to the one that we as men, quote unquote, go out to and work. We have to recognize the home as another enterprise that even ranks higher than that job that we go out there to do. And so while she is there, we need to provide the resources that she needs to run it. We need to provide the staff that she needs to run it, and not just assume that a home is a place for where we get away with any nonsense that we do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Anne here has a follow-up. She says here, I have a question about the agreement that a stay-at-home is a job. Does this mean the partner will not be able to afford a nanny and still work? I don't understand it, Anne. Does it mean the partner would not be able to afford a nanny and still work? If you can clarify, we'll get to that. I'll go to Lekesh. Says, yes, Tanya, you got it perfectly. Being able to cook and keep an eye on the kids is a good example. And yes, men have the ability to learn this kind of multitasking because that's what it means to run a household, like walking and chewing gum at the same time. Okay. I agree. Every single thing can be learned. You just have to have the willingness to learn it. You just have to, even if you're not, you end up not being as good at it as your partner. The whole essence is you're a team. The things that you're going to be better at than she is, the things that she's going to be better at than you are, but you're there to complement each other. But for the most part, we see it as a lot of people just doing rivalry. It's yours, it's mine, it's yours, it's mine. But if you could be a team, that's why I'm talking about teamwork here. You could be a team, you complement each other. Somebody will be better at something than you.
Exactly.
But you're together to make that goal met, to achieve that goal. Even when it comes down to budgeting, I always say let the two spouses do it together. But the truth is one person is going to be better at numbers than the other person. One person is going to be better at putting those spreadsheets together than the other person. But does it mean the other person should just stay away? No. It means when the person who's good at it has put it together, the other person needs to look at it and say, okay, I think this amount is too small. I think this is too high. I think this is this. You two adjust it and you're agreeing on it together. She made the budget. You look at it and revise it, but you're agreeing on it together. It's a family budget. It's your money together. It's the money bowl, like you put it. It's one team. You should be working towards the same goal.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's always a good thing to seek an understanding when you talk about money, and when you're setting limits, you set those limits with an understanding of where each other is coming from. And it's important that we don't take each other's points as though they are throwing punches. Mm-hmm. Understanding of where they are coming from, and work together on it when we set those limits.
Okay, so we're coming up on 1 hour. We're at 1 hour 4 minutes already. Do we have any final words for our viewers? Any final words for fathers? Happy Father's Day, people. Any final words for them?
Yeah, so just a final Happy Father's Day to you again, and thank you to all the fathers that are in the house. Well, I didn't see a comment from any father, and I'm not sure if I have or not, but Happy Father's Day to you, all the fathers in the house, and to some of the mothers that are playing a father's role. I say Happy Father's Day to you as well. And let's communicate, and try and live within our means, and discuss it, and be transparent and open, and it would save us some of those tensions that we might develop if we're not transparent. So that would be my final word. Thank you for having me on the show, and hopefully I learned a lot of things on the show as well today. So hopefully those that are listening, they picked up a few points that can be applicable to their personal lives. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing to be debt free.
Oh, I was going to ask you, how does it feel to be debt-free? It's amazing. That's the word, amazing. So,
amazing. It's amazing to be debt-free.
So now that you're debt-free, do you still budget?
Yes, of course. To stay debt free is to budget, because
Absolutely.
if you don't budget, then you're setting yourself up to go back in the ditch.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you are in control. It's not it, it's not a debt that is controlling your life now. You actually define what you need to do and what you want to do, and you work with your family purse, and it defines your lifestyle, and you get to decide if you're going to have a side hustle that would bring in more income so that you can achieve some of the things that you need to achieve sooner. So
Yeah.
it's an amazing feeling.
Yeah. Amazing. And for people who like, it's so easy to find extra places to pick up extra money here and there. If you're working at a job that allows you to pick extra hours, just sign up for extra hours when they say, hey, do you want to, are you able to come in extra? But it's only possible for you to start saying yes to a lot of those things when you know where you're going to and you're not thinking to yourself, I'm doing too many hours, I'm working a lot, I don't rest at all, and things like that. But when you're looking, when you have a plan, like you guys, you had a plan. You said, I'm going to be debt free in X amount of months or whatever you said. But you got debt free even faster than you thought.
Yeah,
Because
we got
once
the
you
faster than
started,
we
the
thought.
habit kicked in, and it was like, wow, we can do this. We're doing
Yeah,
it, we're doing it. And then 2 year, 1 year down the road, you were done. 2 years for us, 1 year for you.
yeah. So sometimes, uh, for those of us that believe in prayers kind of just work some kind of miracles that are beyond our understanding, and we got out of it sooner because opportunities just came up with even overtime at work where they never existed before. Just when we finished a series of prayers for it, and we were like, okay, thank you, Jesus, keep them coming.
I always say it this way. I don't know if you guys were listening to the show today. If you watched the last episode I did, which was an episode special, I really explained my philosophy on our interactions with the universe in that one. If you haven't watched it, the whole, it's an hour long episode. You can go watch it to get a fuller picture of what I'm trying to explain here. But this is the way it is. When you set a goal, you set a timeline for the goal. Your prayer isn't like, I want money or things like that. Your prayer is, or the universe brings things to you. Like when you know what you're looking for, all you need for the universe to show you is how.
Yeah,
The universe being God, the universe being, if you're not a Christian or whatever, you just believe in the universe, that's the universe. God or what is, it's spiritual. So the how is going to come to you. Just
exactly.
have your why, have the willingness to do it, have the desire to do it, and then things are going to come to you. Opportunities are going to open, and that you will be able to recognize them because that is what you were looking for. Once it comes, you will know that that's what you were looking for, and you will be able to get it.
Indeed.
So thank you very much, everybody, for being with us for this full hour. It's been another episode of The Reason You Were Broke. Happy Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to my amazing husband who's watching the kids right now. Happy Father's Day to all the men who couldn't make it, who are going to watch this in replay. Be intentional with your money, and it depends on you. You can do it. You've got what it takes. Just go out and make it happen.
Yeah,
Thank you so
and
much, Jacob, for being with us.
my pleasure. And a special shout out to that father that is watching with the kids. It's amazing.
All right. Bye, everyone. Bye, bye,
Thank
bye
you. Bye.
now.
Have a nice day.
Thanks.